In 1985, the biggest brand on the planet spent $4 million and ran taste tests on 200,000 people to build a better Coca-Cola. And it worked. The new formula beat Pepsi. It beat original Coke. The data was overwhelming. 77 days later, it was dead. Their switchboards were taking 10,000 furious calls a day. People were hoarding the old stuff in their basements. Protest groups formed. It's still called the biggest marketing blunder in history. So how does a company get the science perfectly right and still detonate its own brand? Because they tested the wrong thing entirely. And the mistake they made is one you've probably made this week. Stick around. To feel this, you have to understand what Coca-Cola was in 1985. It wasn't a soft drink. It was a piece of America. The thing your grandfather drank, the thing in every film, on every billboard, the taste of summer. It hadn't changed its formula in 99 years, nearly a century of the exact same recipe. And the formula itself was mythology, locked in a vault, known to almost nobody. The company had spent a century telling everyone that this exact secret recipe was irreplaceable, that there was one Coca-Cola and there could never be another. They had, in other words, spent 100 years making the recipe sacred. Remember that, because they were about to walk into the vault and change the thing they'd taught the world to worship. But behind the marble headquarters in Atlanta, the executives were quietly panicking, because a scrappier rival had found a weapon, and it was working. The weapon was a folding table. Starting in 1975, Pepsi set up booths in malls across America with two shrouded cups. No labels, no branding, just drink both, tell us which you like better. They called it the Pepsi Challenge, and people kept picking Pepsi. Pepsi put it on television relentlessly. Real people, blindfolded, choosing the rival. Coke's market share was sliding. And here's what truly rattled Atlanta. When Coca-Cola ran the same test internally, they got the same result. Their own people preferred Pepsi. But there was a flaw hiding inside the Pepsi Challenge that almost nobody spotted at the time. A sip test is one mouthful, and in one mouthful, the sweeter drink almost always wins. Sugar hits fast and pleasant. Give someone an entire can, though, with a burger and 40 minutes, and sweeter can start to feel like too much. Pepsi hadn't proven people liked Pepsi more. It had proven people liked one sip of Pepsi more. So the executives drew what looks like an entirely logical conclusion. If people prefer Pepsi's taste in a blind test, then taste is the problem. Fix the flavor, fix the company. Hold on to that sentence, because it's the exact moment the mistake was made. Not in 1985, right here in the diagnosis. So Coca-Cola did what a serious company does. They went to work. 2 years of development, roughly $4 million in research, nearly 200,000 consumer taste tests, and they nailed it. They built a sweeter, smoother formula that in blind tests beat Pepsi by around 8% and beat original Coke by about 20%. By the numbers, this was a triumph, but buried in that research was a warning nobody weighted properly. When researchers asked people how they'd feel if the original was taken away, about 10 to 12% were upset, some furious. 10% sounds survivable, right? Except researchers noticed something odd in the focus groups. One angry person could turn the whole room. Disapproval was contagious. That wasn't noise in the data. That was the future, whispering. And here's the question that 200,000 tests never properly asked. They asked over and over, which of these do you prefer? They never really asked, how would you feel if we took the old one away forever? Those sound like the same question. They are not remotely the same question. One is about flavor, the other is about loss. And humans are far, far more sensitive to losing something than to gaining something better. They pressed ahead. On April 22, 1985, executives revealed the plan to their bottlers, who gave them a standing ovation. The next day, they announced it to the world with the tagline, "The best just got better." For the first time in 99 years, Coca-Cola changed. And to avoid competing with themselves, they did the truly fateful thing. They stopped making the original entirely. The reaction wasn't disappointment. It was grief. Coca-Cola's switchboards were buried under 8 to 10,000 calls a day. Not complaints, heartbreak. People wrote letters describing it as a personal loss. Protest groups formed with actual names and actual meetings. Consumers cleared out shelves and filled their basements with cases of the old formula. And a black market appeared where people paid absurd prices for the original. Some were reselling old Coke at a markup. A soft drink had become a collectible overnight. Manufactured scarcity, one more time. Except this time, nobody planned it. In the American South, where the brand was born, it landed as something close to betrayal. This was their drink. Nobody asked them. And Pepsi did what any rival would do. They threw a party. Their ad showed baffled Coke drinkers trying Pepsi and realizing what they'd been missing. In May 1985, Pepsi sales jumped 14% over the year before, their biggest increase ever recorded. Here's the detail that shows how badly they'd misread it. New Coke wasn't universally hated on taste. Plenty of people who tried it thought it was fine. But by July, only about 30% of people surveyed said they liked it. Because now they weren't tasting a beverage. They were tasting the thing that had replaced the one they loved. Then the bottlers turned. The people who actually put the product on shelves told headquarters this could not continue. On July 11th, 1985, just 77 days after the launch, Coca-Cola surrendered. They announced the original was coming back, rebranded Coca-Cola Classic. The news interrupted television broadcasts. A U.S. senator called it a meaningful moment in American history. People celebrated in the street over a soda returning to shelves. New Coke limped on, was renamed Coke 2 in 1992, and quietly died in 2002. But here's the part that makes this story genuinely strange. When Coca-Cola Classic came back, sales didn't just recover, they surged. Coke ended up stronger than before the whole disaster. A generation that had taken the drink for granted suddenly remembered they loved it because they'd been forced to imagine life without it. Which is why, for 40 years, people have insisted the whole thing was a genius plot, that Coke staged the failure to reignite demand. The company has always denied it, and their president, Don Keough, gave what might be the greatest corporate answer ever recorded. Roughly, we're not that dumb, and we're not that smart. So what actually happened here? Coca-Cola ran 200,000 tests on the liquid and forgot that nobody was buying the liquid. They were buying childhood, tradition, being an American. 100 years of a red logo meaning something. You can measure sugar. You can't measure meaning. So it wasn't in the data. And notice how the blind test lied. In a tiny plastic cup, one sip, sweeter wins. But that's not how anyone drinks a Coke. You drink a whole can, with a meal, with a memory attached. They optimized for the test instead of the life. Diamonds, leggings, late fees, now soda. Every story on this channel keeps landing on the same truth. You're never just buying the product. You're buying the story around it. Coca-Cola forgot that for 77 days and nearly 99 years of meaning almost went down the drain with it. And the strangest lesson of all is that they were right about the flavor, and it didn't matter even slightly. You can win the taste test and still lose, because people don't drink a formula. They drink everything they've ever attached to it. The data told them what was in the cup. It could never tell them what was in the customer. Real question. Is there something you loved that a company improved and ruined? A recipe, an app redesign, a game update? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear which betrayal still stings.